to Completely Booked,
the official podcast of the Jackson Public Library.
I'm Jenna.
And I'm Brian.
Producer Brian's back here with me again today, and we are talking to a very, very important special guest, per usual. We have State Attorney Melissa Nelson on the podcast today.
We do.
I did not expect her to be so welcoming and so nice.
Yeah, she, like you said, I think you said something when we started, but yeah, she interviewed you for 30 minutes. She came in and wanted to know everything about us.
Yeah, how nice is that? I mean, she, before we started, she's like, "Where are you guys from? Where are you from?" And I told her that I was from Niceville, Florida, and she was like, "Oh my gosh." Everyone knows someone from Niceville, but most of the time I don't know them. But she was like, "My best friend from college is from Niceville."
Guys, Jenna instantly knew who she was talking about and guessed it on the first try.
I was like, "Oh, I know who she's friends with." And yeah, it was so crazy. It was like, I know her whole family, grew up with them. It was hilarious. So she was super cool. And she tells us all about what she does as the state attorney, which, to be honest, I didn't know much. I was a little fuzzy too. I was like, all right.
We researched it, but I still wasn't sure.
Yeah. So she explains what she does. She talks about, really being a people's person, and she takes every meeting, which I've heard about her. And so it was really cool to see that all the nice things I heard about her were true. So here is Melissa Nelson, our state attorney. Well, I feel like we've already been talking for like an hour, so I guess we might as well start the interview since... Melissa, thank you so much for being here. This is really a treat. And I know you've gotten to know me already. She's been interviewing me for like the past 30 minutes, guys. But let's get to know you a little bit more. So tell us about you, where you're from, and when did you first know you wanted to be a lawyer?
Somebody just asked me that this week, which I was talking to a middle school class from Eugene Butler, and somebody asked me, when did you know you wanted to be a lawyer? And I had to scratch my head. It was later than most people, I think. So I grew up in Tallahassee. Even though I'm not from Jacksonville, I've been here for 20 years. I have family roots here. My grandmother was born and raised here, and both of my parents actually were born here in Jacksonville. And so growing up in Tallahassee, we frequently made trips over here to visit family. I went to school in Gainesville, undergrad at the University of Florida, and I stayed there for law school. And I knew in undergrad, probably middle of undergrad, that I'd like to go to law school. And then in law school decided I wanted to become a prosecutor just because of my interest in law school. I became very involved with the trial team at the University of Florida, and I loved criminal law. And so the marriage of the two interests, being in a courtroom and being interested in criminal law, just was a good fit for becoming a prosecutor.
Yeah. So tell us about what you do now.
So I am a lawyer, and I'm still a prosecutor, but I'm the elected state attorney. And so I'm not in the courtroom on the daily basis like I used to be when I was at the office many years ago.
So tell us what the state attorney does and the purpose of this type of role.
So I'm an elected official, and our jurisdiction covers 3 counties. So Clay County, Nassau County, and Duval County. And our office is charged with investigating and prosecuting violations of state criminal law. And that ranges from misdemeanors, petty theft, all the way to capital homicide, so cases involving the death penalty. We have 330 employees. We have 120 lawyers. Our office, as compared to law firms, is the biggest law firm in this area. We go to court. We handle both front-end investigations, and we handle the prosecution of cases after an arrest is made, where we take cases to court and either resolve them through a plea or through a trial.
So was this your first time campaigning for a position?
Yes. So
what was that like?
I didn't have on my bucket list to become a politician or to seek elected office, but made the decision to do it in 2016 after a lot of deliberation and a lot of prayer, and came to the decision that it was, I think, important for our community. So what was it like to run? It was fast and furious and really exciting. And no matter how the campaign had ended up, I knew in the middle of it, it was a decision I would never regret. It was great for me personally to learn about my community in a way that I was just not completely familiar. It was good for my family. It was very good for my kids. And it taught me about the importance of civic engagement. I'd always been interested in politics. I'd always followed people who decided to run for office. But being in it, and it was a very different but very rewarding experience.
Yeah. And so how is this role different than what you had been doing previously? Like,
very different.
Yeah.
So I tried a case last year, and I am going to try a case again this year. But preparing a case to bring in front of a jury and actually doing that takes a lot of time. And so it takes a lot of focus, which means that when I try a case, it takes me away from my regular daily obligations. So I committed when I came in that I wanted to make sure that I was still in the courtroom, and we'll do that. But I thought I would be able to do it more frequently than I've been able to, and that's just because of time. So
yeah, I mean, I know you're like super busy. We made this interview with you. I guess we scheduled this almost like 2 months ago. I emailed your assistant trying to figure out if we could get an interview, and she's like, "Oh, how about 2 months from now in March?" And I was like, "Oh, perfect." So tell us a little bit about your day to day. Like, what does a typical day look like for you?
So every day is very different, and that's what makes the job actually, I think, for me, particularly fulfilling. So it's I have a lot of meetings, a lot of community meetings. I have accepted every speaking invitation that I have received, and that's part of the delay in being able to accept invitations, because we have said no to no one. Our first year in office, we took, not just me personally, but the folks I work with, and including me, over 300 meetings with entities in the community who were interested in talking with the state attorney's office. We've really tried to forge relationships with partners who we either had let those relationships languish or hadn't had them before. So my day consists of a lot of meetings. Once a week, I try to go over to our courthouse and watch our lawyers in trial. If there is a trial of significant community interest, I will often be in the courtroom to watch that. I have standing meetings with our leadership, and I'm involved in figuring out the balance about how to manage effectively, how to empower folks to execute an agenda but stay very involved has been a challenge, but I have remained very involved in the development of policy in the office, and so lots of internal meetings related to our priorities. But every day is different.
Yeah.
And fast moving.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, no, I can't. And I've heard this about you, that you're super accessible to not only people within, government, but also our community. I was at a meeting in City Hall, and I was telling them, well, I was bragging, let's be honest, that we got an interview with you for our podcast. And they're like, yeah, I went on a run with Melissa, and she's just like, saying hey and stopping to talk to the local people that are outside. So I think that really tells a lot about, who you are and what you do as an elected official, which I think is great.
Well, thanks. I feel very strongly about the fact that I don't think I'm any different today than I was 2 years ago when I was elected. But importantly, I'm a public servant, so I work for the people. It's my job to be accessible. I can't be accessible on a dime just because I am one person, but I'm surrounded by a really great team at the state attorney's office, and when I can't make something, I think we're very good at triaging and making sure that we connect members of the community with the right people in our office who can address whatever issue they might have or question they might have. I just think that's very important. And I talked a lot about this on the campaign, but for us to be effective as a prosecuting agency in courts and be able to secure justice for the state of Florida, our community has to trust us. When we pick juries on Monday, the people in the jury pool should be familiar with the work of the state attorney's office, and they should have a good feeling, a good connotation about the work we do. And we can't build trust without having relationships in the community. So it's been a focus of mine personally, but a focus of our administrations as well. And so I hope that our office as a whole, I think we already are, but we'll reap the benefits of that in years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were reading, in addition to your busy job, you also have a life, obviously. And we were reading in the Jack's Daily Record last year about your work-life effectiveness talk that you did to a local business group. And, you gave the anecdote of not being able to go to a yoga class because you got a call from the shooting that was at the Jack's Landing last year. So tell us a little bit about how you keep that life balance with work and everything else that goes on.
So I actually hated when that ran because I thought it sounded as if I, was disappointed that I couldn't make an exercise class in light of the tragedy that occurred that day. I was using it as an example to talk about the unpredictability of my day when that was a terrible afternoon, and obviously no one expected that. And so I had shared that example in a talk I had given just as a demonstration of how unpredictable my day is. And so if I don't generally do things in the morning, for my personal well-being, then they don't necessarily get done.
Right.
And in that talk, I didn't talk about balance because I thought it was actually ironic that I was invited to give advice at all on this topic, because I could use a lot of advice about it. And in doing reading and preparing for the speech, I had read where a professional had talked about that one should think about, instead of balance, because that's very difficult to achieve, about the concept of work-life effectiveness. Am I being effective in my personal life with my family? Am I being effective in my professional life at work? And so that just rang really true to me, and that's why I gave a speech and asked people to think about balance in a different way.
That makes sense, especially as women. It's so hard. There's so many things going on. You're pulled in all the different directions, and sometimes it can be difficult to realize that you need that, and you can't always say yes to everything, which is very difficult. And we also did we thoroughly stalked you, of course. And in our research, we came across an IMDb page for you, which means that you've been on TV shows, and you were on Forensic Files and the TV series Solved.
I had to ask today what an IMDb page was.
So yeah, you're on there because you were, I guess, what do they do? Cast member, or anytime you've been in a documentary or a TV or movie, you show up on there. So what was that experience like, being on those TV documentaries?
Well, both Forensic Files and Solved were focused on the same case.
Oh, okay.
And in fact, that particular case has been the subject repeatedly and continues to be the subject, despite the fact that it's a very old case. It's a particularly interesting case, and so it continues to be the subject of crime shows, particularly cold case shows. In fact, I think 2 more shows did, and I didn't appear on either of those last year, but did spots on this particular case. The experience, because I guess Forensic Files was probably the first time I had sat down with anybody in the media to give an interview about a case. That was, I would describe a new experience for me. A long time ago that was filmed, and Solved was filmed also a long time ago. But both a good opportunity to, the case involved a young woman, Corey Parker, who I felt a lot of similarities with. So both were opportunities to really honor her memory in a way that I thought was good for her family and her friends.
Yeah. And what are some of the other challenges that come along with this type of role that you're in now?
I'd say in reflecting on first 2 years, I have found the biggest challenge to be communications, both internally and externally. How frequently to communicate. I tend to err on the side of perhaps too much information, but I think it's really important as we make decisions in our office that people within the office feel like they know it before they read about it in the newspaper or see it on the news. So when we take actions of consequence to our employees or actions that matter to the community, I tend to try to make sure that our office hears it from me. But I also don't want to become, I want to be judicious in the way I communicate so that I don't become, show up in somebody's email box so frequently that they no longer read my emails. So finding that balance about how frequently to communicate has been interesting. And in what mechanism to communicate. Is it through an office-wide email? Is it through a newsletter? We have instituted a newsletter, a quarterly newsletter, which I think is a good way for me to communicate news of the office to the office. We're about to issue this week our second annual report, and that's a report that both internally folks can read, but externally it's our report to the public on the work of our last year. And then communicating externally has been an interesting and new thing for me about deciding how frequently, again, to let media know about something. We've tried very hard when we are issuing decisions that involve a case that has garnered a lot of interest to make sure that we're very, very comprehensive and thoroughly transparent in how we made our decision, so that people who are interested can read about it and if they want, challenge us on it, but most importantly, understand how we made a decision.
Yeah, you said that was kind of one of the biggest changes, is that, before you didn't talk to the media, but now you kind of have to let them know what's going on. And
it's part of my responsibility.
Right.
And it's a pledge I made when I came in that I would always talk to the media, because that's how the public learns about what the state attorney's office is doing.
Right.
So I feel like that is part of my job and my obligation.
Yeah. And despite all of your busy schedule, you said that you still are an avid reader or try to find time to read.
I wouldn't call myself avid any longer.
But you've read several books. So what are some of your favorite books? Any recommendations?
Well, my all-time favorite book is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. But we were talking earlier about, I was thinking back on books I loved as a kid. Brian's Song, which impacted me. We were talking about The Natural earlier. And
I wrote that one down.
Yes. And I was surprised that Tim Quick, our chief investigator, had not yet read it. Recently, last year, I read The Devil in the Grove, and our office recently hosted Gilbert King as the first author in our newly formed lecture series to address our office. And that was a fantastic story. And coincidentally, he addressed our office the night before Governor DeSantis and his cabinet pardoned the Groveland Four. So that was really, really interesting. I was late in reading All the Light I Cannot See last year, but it was so, that was a beautiful book. So I'm getting ready to read Beneath the Ruthless Sun, also by Gilbert King. I just finished a book, Rectify, by Lara Bazelon, which is about the power of the concept of restorative justice in the context of wrongful conviction. And I just finished a book that will be on the bookshelves in July by her sister, actually, Emily Bazelon, called Charge, and it's about the work of prosecutors around the United States and how the work is changing.
Yeah, this everyone's so interested in true crime now, but by the nature of your job, you're obviously interested in true crime. It's so funny to see. that play out. And okay, we have one last question for you. And we know you said you knew you wanted to be a lawyer late in life, sort of. So when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
You know, I don't remember what I wanted to be as a child. I know in college, I wanted, in high school and in college, I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to be a TV anchor. I thought Connie Chung was amazing. And I was a journalism major at the University of Florida, and I actually switched my major my junior year and decided that I wanted to go to law school instead of pursuing a career in journalism. So I don't remember what I wanted to be as a kid, but my earliest memory is that I wanted to be a television anchor, which is funny now to look back on.
Yeah, I mean, you're still doing a lot of that now, so that's awesome. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes. We appreciate it.
Thank you. It was great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. You know, Melissa said that she wasn't an avid reader, but I beg to differ. She gave us lots of books that she's read and ones that she's reading right now.
And then sent us an entire other list of stuff she didn't say on the podcast.
Yeah, we have enough books here that she loves that we're going to make a full book list for her on our podcast page and maybe on our blog.
Yeah, we should. That way you guys can read what our state attorney's reading.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. And she was talking about her whole lecture series that they're doing at the state attorney's office, which hopefully we'll be able to get involved with and promote on our channels as well. So you guys will know about that. So a couple books that she was talking about: Devil in the Grove, All the Light We Cannot See, The Great Alone. And then she also read local author Mark Wood's Lassoing the Sun. I bought that for my mom and she loved it too.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you got that signed, didn't you?
Yeah, I went to an event that our friends of the library did, and he signed it, and he did a full talk with pictures of his trip to all the national parks. It's really, really cool. So we have tons of books here that she really loves. So we will put those on our podcast page. So make sure you do that. Make sure you follow us too at Jack's Library, because we will post this there. And our podcast page is jackspubliclibrary.org/podcast. Make sure you subscribe to our show as well. Don't miss an episode, guys. This podcast was produced by Brian Thomas, a.k.a. BT, a.k.a. Producer Brian.
Goodbye.